So I've always said, if you want people to be more sustainable, you need to make it easy and you need to make it cheap. And actually the way that our platform works is it actually saves you money rather than costing you money, which is nice. And then we ask for a portion of the savings that we've made people. So yeah, there's definitely a cost element here because it's the way to get everyone to engage in kind of decarbonisation is to actually demonstrate that it can be cheaper for everyone. So we think that's a really key driver, and it's how we get paid.
So on a personal level, was there a kind of defining moment when you decided that you wanted to run a business that balances purpose and profit? Welcome to the Impact Files podcast. I'm your host, Ned Wells, and I'm really pleased you're here. Welcome to another episode of the Impact Files podcast, and I'm delighted to be joined today by Tom Cox, founder and managing director of Decent Energy and host of People Planet Pint in Cambridge. Tom, welcome.
Thanks, Ned. Nice to be here. Hi, Ali.
So we'll start, Tom, with an introduction to yourself, to Decent Energy, and the work that you do there.
Yeah, sure. Me personally, I've been interested in sustainability for a very long time. I was a very early adopter of EVs back in 2014 when I got my first Nissan Leaf, and have kind of acquired various bits of low carbon tech ever since then. A few years ago, I got solar installed and was very disappointed with that process and realised how none of these things seem to work together nicely, kind of solar panels, heat pumps, EV chargers, all the various different bits of low carbon tech, and saw an opportunity to make them work better. And that's kind of how Decent Energy was born. And what we do primarily is link together those bits of technology and enhance them with data from kind of what's going on in the grid, what's going on in the wholesale energy market, outdoor weather, a variety of other factors, and then use those to make decisions for that equipment so that it reduces the cost and the carbon intensity of the energy that we will use.
That's so interesting. So it's basically hitting two problems. I mean, we had solar and a battery installed earlier this year, and whilst the systems seemed great and we saw an immediate reduction in the cost of our electricity, the apps that they shared on my iPhone and the various kind of websites to try and understand what's going on really don't seem joined up. And it's incredibly hard to understand the actual numbers, and there's no kind of mapping across apps or anything like that. So that's obviously one side of it. And the other side that we'll hopefully dig down to a little bit later is it sounds like there's a further kind of cost-saving element to what you're doing as well for users.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I've always said, if you want people to be more sustainable, you need to make it easy and you need to make it cheap. And actually the way that our platform works is it actually saves you money rather than costing you money, which is nice. And then we ask for a portion of the savings that we've made people. So yeah, there's definitely a cost element here because it's the way to get everyone to engage in kind of decarbonisation is to actually demonstrate that it can be cheaper for everyone. Yeah. So we think that's a really key driver, and it's how we get paid.
So on a personal level, was there a kind of defining moment when you decided that you wanted to run a business that balances purpose and profit?
Yeah, so I kind of always knew that I wanted to. So I've run several kind of consulting businesses in the past, and I knew that I wanted to leverage those businesses to go and launch a product at some point. So I spent a bit of time kind of working out what that product was. As I said, I got solar installed and then realized that there was a big gap there. And actually it was kind of the other thing for me when we got solar installed that I realized quite quickly is, wow, this has got huge potential. Why doesn't every house have this on their roof? How can we speed up the rollout of that? And how can we make sure that it's successful for everyone? So that was my original thinking, was can we put it on people's roofs and then maybe have payback in the form of kind of some of the energy that's being generated, have them pay for that. I then realized that had been done extensively, kind of the rent to roof schemes that existed in the feed-in tariff days. I was kind of struggling to find a workable business model that would help us kind of expedite that rollout. So yeah, really it was kind of the I identified the problem of how do we get renewables in more homes, how do we get them to work better, how do we speed up decarbonisation, and then I tried to find a model to fit that really, from the other way around.
Sure. And where have you reached in terms of the scale of the business? Because you're a relatively young organisation, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. So we only kind of registered the business a year ago, and I only went full time working on this about almost exactly 6 months ago now. So end of April, I switched to this being my full time gig. So yeah, we're very, very young, but we've got a lot of really great support from the industry. So we recently won Solar and Storage Live's startup of the year 2025, which is great. And we've got various other bits of recognition coming out over the course of the next few months that are currently embargoed that I won't talk about because I think I'll get in trouble. But yeah, no, we're doing really well in terms of kind of traction in the form of recognition in the market, understanding of the value that the solution can provide. We are still in the process of trying to acquire customers. Our first product is still in beta at the moment, but we're already developing our second, and we've kind of got a very clear roadmap of the 4 core products that we want to deliver. So yeah, it's for 6 months, I think we've done fantastically well. We actually on the kind of first birthday, as it were, we put a post out on LinkedIn kind of summarizing the various different achievements over the course of the year. And that was a really nice moment because I think, especially when you're founding a business like this, you can constantly feel like you're not doing well enough and you're not getting enough done just because there's so much to do. You get a fraction of the amount done of the whole. It doesn't feel like you've achieved much, but actually when you get to look back and see kind of what's been done over the course of the past year, yeah, it's a nice way to take stock.
Is that first product out on the market at the moment, kind of available for purchase and with a brand name and things like that?
Yeah, so it's called Shîfter. It's out there for anyone to sign up to. It's free to sign up to at the moment because it's still in beta. Interestingly, one of the most challenging things that we found to get to produce was not actually the kind of forecasting and the optimization. It was producing a build. They always say it's the simplest things that are the most difficult, right? And that for us has been the biggest challenge, is telling people how much we actually save them after we save them the money, and getting that down to a really finite level. But yeah, it's completely open. We only support 3 inverter manufacturers at the moment. That's going to be 4 in the next before the end of November, certainly, because we've got quite a large project hopefully coming up with a council to provide our software over the top of some solar installations that they've done on some council housing. So that's going to be our 4th integration there.
Sorry, say that again. You only support, what was that?
3 inverter manufacturers. So yeah, inverters kind of as the brain of the solar system, your solar installation. It's the bit that converts the energy coming into your solar panels into energy your house can use and stores energy in batteries. So that's the bit that's the problem we're focusing on right now.
Right.
It's a good point, because actually at the start of the podcast, I did say that we're looking across EV, heat pump and solar inverter, but right now our core focus is on solar inverter, because that really unlocks the rest of the optimization. So the solar, especially a hybrid inverter that has a battery, it has visibility of all of the consumption of all of the devices in your household, what's coming in from the grid, what it's sending back to the grid. So that's kind of where we're starting at the moment.
Which inverters are those? Are there 3 brand names that you could share with our audience?
Yep. So it's Solis, Cox ESS, and Give Energy are the first 3 that we've done so far, and the next one that we're working on right now is GrowWatt. But one thing I would ask people, if you've not heard your particular inverter in that list, please do go sign up to the website anyway, because if we find out where the demand is, who has what inverters installed, that helps drive our decision making for the next one that we integrate with.
That's fantastic. Right, I would love to hand over to Ali.
Thanks, Ned. That's really interesting. Thank you, Tom. So we understand the decisions that you made and working out the problem. First of all, the problems you wanted to solve, and then which areas of focus you wanted to drill into. Just to follow on from that, what is Decent Energy's business case for sustainability? How do you measure it, and how do you report it to anyone who needs to know? And I'm thinking here of your board, your potential investors, and so on.
Yeah, so for us, we kind of have a dual mission. So speeding up the decarbonisation of the grid, so reducing the carbon intensity of energy everyone uses, and reducing the cost of energy, and trying to have a bit of an impact on fuel poverty as well is a key part of what we're focused on. And actually, the decarbonisation thing kind of leads to electrification. Electrification is the obvious endpoint as part of that. So we have 2 core metrics. So one is the amount of money that we've saved people, and because our commercial model is risk reward based, the more money we save for our end customer, the more money we earn, because we take a percentage of that saving. So we think it's a very clearly aligned focus for us that we can only have the customer's best interest at heart, because it is also our best interest. I think it means that our incentives are really well aligned, so that works well. And then the other metric that we measure is the amount of CO2 that we've avoided. So we don't remove, and we can't kind of change the energy makeup of the grid, at least not at the scale that we're at now. But what we can do is we can move energy consumption to times of day that are cheaper and greener. And by doing so, it means that we're shifting demand ever so slightly into the times when renewables are available and away from the times when we need to turn things like gas turbines on and all that good stuff. So yeah, and actually that we kind of express those metrics. The way that we measure those two things is looking at the average price per kilowatt hour that our customers pay compared to the average price of electricity on the UK wholesale market at the moment, and the average amount of CO2 per kilowatt hour as well. We look at those two things to determine how well we're doing against that target. Again, against the wholesale value, because what we're going to see over time is if we just calculated average price per kilowatt hour, well, the price of energy is going up, and so that will increase. We need to measure that against the average price. And similarly with carbon, the intensity of carbon of energy is decreasing over time. So we also need to measure that against a baseline, because otherwise that number would go up and that number would go down.
Yeah, got you. So yeah, very clear measures, as you say, clear and sort of transparent to everyone who's interested, which of course is your customers primarily, but and all other parties. And I see that Decent Energy is recognised as a high growth company by now it's a branch of the UK Innovation Agency, isn't it? The UK Innovate UK Business Growth. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah, right.
So you've clearly got a compelling story to tell in terms of your the economic viability. And so yes, did you have to provide additional data for that? Did you have to? What sort of story did you need to tell there to balance again the economic and the sustainability sides?
Yeah, so we had a contact in that organisation under a serendipitous meeting a long time ago from when I was invited to go and see some pitches at one of an organisation in Cambridge, and actually we met the person that works for Innovate UK Business Growth there. And when I was thinking of starting up a business, he kind of he sprang to mind, and I was like, I remember Dan, who I met a couple of years ago. I'll see if I can track him down and find out, because I think his thing there was he was providing a pitch deck that was like an anatomy of a pitch deck. It was like how do you put together a pitch? It was quite handy because we reached out to Dan again, and I said, I've got this idea. He was like, oh great, let's hear it. Come and talk to us, and let's hear about that. And we managed to convince him that it was a compelling enough proposition that it should be taken forward. I think, yeah, we're at, and I think that's kind of Dan, our growth specialist, kind of sees this inflection point as well in the market where flexibility, which is effectively where the grid asks us to put energy or take energy off the grid at particular times of day to manage demand, is an absolutely massive opportunity in the market, and we kind of demonstrated that by the business case that we pulled together. And Dan's kind of championed us internally in that organisation, which has not been no mean feat. It's no small feat, sorry, because it is quite a rigorous process that he goes through. We kind of sell it to Dan. He then has to take it internally to his team and get kind of I think support from across a variety of other individuals before we get given that status and get given that extra level of support.
That's great. Thank you. Yes, I can imagine it is rigorous, as you say, that there'd be quite a few hoops to jump through there. So all credit to Decent.
Really interested, Tom, in the risk reward model that you've chosen. I mean, that's pretty ballsy, I reckon.
It gets worse.
I mean, I think that the sort of clear advantage from a point of view of modeling the business is you know how many clients you need and how much kind of revenue you've got to save them for you to build a business that is kind of financially sustainable. But I'd love to hear more about, like, how did you decide to go risk reward? And, have you seen it in other organizations kind of related or unrelated to yours where it's been sort of successful and sustainable model?
So for us, I think the reason I say it gets worse, by the way, as well, is not only do we only get paid if we save you money, but we also guarantee that we won't cost you money to the extent that we will pay you any money that we could subsequently cost you. So if we have a significant bug, for example, and it sets your inverter to charge and we can't send another command, then we will pay you back the money that we may cost you there. So we really are backing ourselves. But I think for me, one of the key things was I wanted a simple model that was scalable, both in the B2C and B2B space. So I didn't want to come up with multiple different models. I also wanted something that was extremely low risk on the side of the consumer or the business that wanted to contract with us. And there is zero risk apart from the cost of contracting and starting to do business with us. There's no kind of financial risk on their part because we're guaranteeing to save people money. Yeah, I think trust is the key thing here. What we do is really quite complicated for the average consumer to kind of comprehend. And I think even if you understand it on a conceptual level, which I think that's the bit that's easy to get in touch with, easy to get to grips with, I think the real problem becomes how we convince you that we've saved you money. Because actually, if we're doing our job right, so we're one of the few businesses that the less you come to the website, almost the better. Like, we want this to be something that's quietly working in the background, that requires zero effort on the consumer's part, but it's just saving you money constantly. So yeah, I think the risk reward model is to demonstrate that we really back ourselves, that we know that we can kind of do a good job, that we can save you some money. And also, combined with the risk reward model at the moment, at least, we're not actually offering a tie-in. So we're not requiring people to kind of sign a contract and say that they're going to use our service for 12 months. So you can leave at any time. I like to say that we're the only subscription service that will save you money, if you like, because every month we tell you how much we've saved you, and then we send you an invoice that states a small portion of that saving. So we've actually saved you the money before we get paid, which is quite nice as well.
I imagine you've had some fairly sort of detailed conversations with investors around this whole model as well.
Yeah. But again, I think it's one of the key selling points that is certainly one of the key selling points one of our major investors quoted when he provided kind of a comment for us to pop on a press release, is that he really likes the idea that we help people be more sustainable, and it doesn't only cost them nothing, it actually saves them money. So I think that's a really compelling kind of case to get customers on board.
So there's the investors showing their trust in you and your message, and you mentioned trust as being so key. So that's really interesting. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, it's yeah, like I say, if we're doing it right, you shouldn't see anything, but at the end of the month I'm going to ask you for some money, so you really need to trust us. We're completely transparent with data though, so anyone can see the actions that we performed on your equipment and the rationale for why we performed those actions. So that goes a long way towards building that trust. But for people to then have the time, the inclination, the capability of actually taking that data and then going through the process of kind of proving that we have saved that amount of money would be quite a big ask for the average share.
And before I come on to my next question, I don't think we covered at the very start, Tom, the size of Decent Energy currently. It just made me think of it again there, where you were talking about actually the complexity, the scope of what you do, the data you provide, the ways in which you're working directly hands-on with your customers' tech. So can you just remind us what sort of size are you currently?
Yeah, so we've got 4 employees currently, so folks that are working directly for Decent Energy. We've also, one of our investors is a software development firm and data science firm called Alex, who are based primarily out of Ukraine, and they've provided us with several additional heads, kind of data scientists and data engineers, to help us kind of expedite getting our products out to market. So kind of 4 perms, but then at various different times, the business has had kind of up to 10 people working on it at any given point in time. But yeah, we're very early stage, so that is kind of ebbing and flowing quite a bit. And I've got various different people from throughout my career that I've kind of roped in, where I know that they might be able to give us some support in some specific areas. So yeah, we're very, very small at the moment, but growing. I think in the past year we've hired 2 additional heads. So that's we keep that up, then we'll that's quite an exponential.
Exponential growth, yeah. Great stuff. Okay, thank you. We've been, thinking a lot about what Decent Energy is doing right now, but thinking about the balance of purpose and profit, can you tell us anything about perhaps prior to Decent, or what you've learned from in setting up Decent, particular successes you've had in achieving that balance of purpose and profit, and indeed things which might not have gone so well and which you've learned from?
Yeah, that's an interesting it's an interesting question. I've not really had the opportunity to work in this sort of space before, where I could balance those two things. I think consulting doesn't really lend itself very well to that. And that was my previous career. And yeah, all throughout my career, I've mostly been working with kind of large corporate clients. So, and usually in an IT delivery capacity. So I'm used to running kind of large development teams. But by and large, those development teams, the things that they're working on are dictated by the wider business.
Have you had any instances there where the corporate has perhaps had a sustainability strategy, but then when push comes to shove, finances have been what call the tune?
Not really, actually. The one thing that was very sustainability focused earlier on in my career was running a thing called the sustainability audit program for a large kind of power generation company. So that was perfectly aligned with purpose and profit, because it was make this more transparent. So yeah, sorry, I've not got many good answers there. I think I would say that in decent, we've got some good scenarios, because I think that is a constant challenge with us working out the optimal way to run decent, because there's an obvious win in we could use our software to go and optimize. That is one thing that we're exploring as well, on optimization of kind of data centers, and looking at how we can almost carbon balance data centers rather than just purely load balancing them. That would be one specific example of somewhere that we could go that would be worth an awful lot of money. But we are very focused on, we can focus on one hard to abate sector at a time. And I think for us at the moment, that is the domestic market. And that is also the obvious kind of gap in the market for us at the moment as well. So it is kind of an obvious one that we can go connect all these very disparate bits of tech together and make the home and by and large small businesses work better. I think is one key area for us.
Yeah, thank you. And I think, yes, that makes a lot of sense. You're finding out as you go along, you're addressing one segment or sector at a time. Yeah, I think that's helpful. Thank you.
Really interesting what you're saying, Tom. And I guess I'm trying to visualize what the software, what your platform is actually doing. And I guess simplistically, there are so many sort of sources of information that are kind of looking at a domestic solar battery installation. But in my experience, no single kind of view that brings them all together and analyzes them in a sort of useful way. Is that in a very simple sense? Is that what your platform is actually doing?
Yeah, so there's kind of several stages to what we're working at the moment. So the first product, Shîfter, that I spoke about already, that is very much focused on optimization against the dynamic tariff. So dynamic tariffs are tracking the wholesale cost of energy. So a wholesale cost changes every 30 minutes in the UK. In Europe, it's every 15 minutes, which means that primarily energy companies, but also because of dynamic tariffs, actual consumers, the energy price is changing for us in the UK up to 48 times a day. And that could be as much as several pounds per kilowatt hour, and it could be actually negatively priced. So we actually get paid to consume energy at specific points in time, which is quite fun, especially if you can get your car on charge. So that's one of the pieces of data. But we also take in the carbon intensity of the grid, which is provided. The National Grid has monitoring to tell us what the carbon intensity is, again, during those 30-minute periods. And so we can use those two data points to kind of optimize the charging and discharging of a battery to, first of all, minimize cost, but also minimize carbon intensity. Those two things are highly correlated, but not completely kind of synchronous. So what you'll tend to find is that greener energy tends to be cheaper, but the two don't always perfectly align. So we may find that actually at certain times of day, some of the cheaper energy is actually quite high carbon. So yeah, it depends on what you're looking at various different times of day. But yeah, that's kind of the two data points that we describe to everyone. Where we're going next is we have a new product that we're developing at the moment called Flexer. That's looking at flexibility trading on the grid, which is where either NESO, so the National Energy Systems Operator, or a DNO more locally. So in the east of England, we've got UK Power Networks, the folks who come and dig up the road and cause all the roadworks and upset everyone. They've actually got a really important job of keeping your electricity working. Yeah, monitoring the flexibility markets and then enabling customers to trade on those flexibility markets, which isn't something that consumers have had the ability to do previously. This has always been something reserved for business. And we think there's a massive opportunity at the moment with the amount of battery storage that we've got deployed in the homes and garages in the UK to actually enable consumers to participate in that market, earn some additional money, help balance the grid, with the added advantage that they already have a grid connection. If you see a lot of solar farms, a lot of battery kind of installations at the moment are really backed up because this grid connection reform thing that's now kind of set back a lot of these connections by a couple of years. We always say the one advantage we've got is our customer already has a grid connection, so that's quite a handy one. And if you look at the number of batteries we've got deployed across the UK, we're actually we've commissioned a piece of research with the Association of Decentralized Energy quite recently to try and verify this number, because unfortunately the organisation that was supposed to write it down didn't. We won't go into that. But the amount of battery storage deployed in a domestic setting across the UK right now, we predict could be as high as 2 gigawatt hours, which is about a fifth of the total the total grid storage that's available to us at the moment. So that's for us is one of the big prizes as well. If we could get everyone signed up to the platform tomorrow that has a battery in their home at the moment, we could increase the kind of storage capacity of the UK grid by 20%. That would be absolutely stellar. So yeah, these are the kind of problems that we're trying to solve.
So Tom, I just wanted to ask you what people and processes you've put in place to support Decent's need to be sustainable and profitable.
Yeah, so I think for us it's kind of baked right into the model, which makes it much easier to decide what to do, because the two measures we have are the average price per kilowatt hour, how much money we've saved people, and the average carbon intensity per kilowatt hour, what impact we've had on the carbon intensity of the grid. And we know that those are our two kind of key performance indicators. And actually, if the work that we're doing is contributing to addressing one of those, then we're doing the right things. If the work we're doing doesn't help us to drive down those numbers, then we can take a step back and ask if it's the right thing to be doing. And we have the only other thing actually probably worth adding to that is that we kind of follow a agile development methodology where we go through a process once a week of deciding things that we're going to work on that week based on a prioritized list of stuff that we've defined as being the things that we need to work on. And at the end of the week, everyone in the team demos the work they've done, including me, which is usually telling people what meetings I've had and what discussions I've had. So it's less visible, but just as important, I think, to be really transparent with the team about what I'm working on as well as what they're working on. So we've got a very kind of open and honest conversation there. So I think that transparency that we mentioned earlier that we need to make sure that we've got with customers, we also need to make sure that we have internally as well.
So sustainability and profitability for your organization are really sort of intimately kind of running hand in hand, aren't they?
Yeah, no, absolutely, and very purposefully so as well. If they're our key metrics, then we know that we're heading in the right direction.
Sure. So I wanted to come on to the role of marketing in driving a sustainable business, sort of specifically for Decent. And I guess when I'm thinking about marketing, I'm thinking about communications and media and how that whole side of the world can contribute to what you're doing.
Yeah, it's a really good point, because I think one of the other problems we've got is, as I said before, what we do is complicated. The wider question of energy and decarbonisation itself is also really complex and poorly understood. So it's not just a case of, we're selling widgets and we can just go market our widgets and everyone loves how our widgets look and goes and buys them. We've first of all got to explain a very complicated market that people aren't familiar with, get them to care about it, explain to them how it's going to save them money, and then convince them that we're the right tool to use to do that. So I think it's a really critical challenge of ours. It's also not one that we're altogether gotten to grips with yet. We're still, as we said, very early stage. We're in a beta. We've only very recently, in the last month or so, opened the beta up to kind of any and all customers. So we've not really actively been marketing all that much. But it is a challenge that we can kind of see coming down the road, if you like. We've launched a feature actually quite recently on our website called Power Hour, which I quite like, because I think this starts to explain to customers some of these concepts. So Power Hour is really simple. If you go to the website, decentenergy.io, and you're in Great Britain, because unfortunately it doesn't work for Northern Ireland just yet, because the data that we can get access to doesn't extend there. But if you go to the website, it will pull the carbon intensity for the grid, and it will tell you when the cheapest time of day tomorrow to use energy is. So what you could do is you could manually shift, even if you have no battery or solar or EV or any other low carbon tech. You could just change the time of day that you run the dishwasher to align with that time of day. And that would, in theory, reduce the carbon intensity of the energy that you're using, because you're using energy when more renewables are online, and you're reducing demand at times of day when there's dirtier forms of energy on the grid. So we see that as kind of a nice demonstrator for folks about the broader thing that Shîfter is doing. Because if we can go, right, if you can move just the 1 hour that you're going to run your dishwasher for, then you reduce the carbon intensity. But also, if you have a battery and you sign up to Shîfter, we can do that for you automatically. And also we can monitor the wholesale cost of the grid. And we can make this decision multiple times a day at various different levels as well. So it's not like we'll just charge and discharge your battery. We might charge your battery at a specific level to make sure that you've got exactly the right amount of energy that we anticipate you need for the end of the day. And yeah, so it's kind of a nice introduction into this kind of grid flexibility how things fluctuate over the course of the day.
You've talked about dealing with the energy providers themselves, and I'm curious as to whether they are potentially your partners, potentially subcontracting to you, or your competitors, or can they be both at different times? I'm thinking about this in the light of the marketing message. Would an energy provider see decent energy as a threat and, as I say, a competitor, or are you building relationships with them?
Yeah, I'm gonna clarify this phrase provider, because
Yeah.
I think also
Yeah.
that gets complicated. So, in terms of the grid, provider could mean, I guess, either generator or supplier. I think you mean supplier, so I think you mean like sort of kind of Octopus and Ovo and Volt.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
So yeah, I think for us, it could potentially be that they end up being customers. They use some of the optimizations that we build. They use some of the integrations that we build, because the process of integrating with all these bits of low carbon tech is extremely costly and complex and requires constant maintenance, because all of these manufacturers will change their API at the drop of a hat, and then you've got to go and work out how it works again. So yeah, I think there's definitely a case for them to eventually become customers. They various different times could be competitors, but we are also energy supplier agnostic. So we will look at your consumption, we'll look at what dynamic tariffs are available and make a recommendation, or potentially time of use tariffs, because in certain scenarios with the right amount of battery, that could actually be a better option for you as well, depending on your consumption. So yeah, we could help sell some of their products. We could help them with integrations and optimization. They're definitely a kind of a key segment that we're looking at. Similarly, though, generators are also really interesting for us. So if you've got an energy generation company, the best example of what we call curtailments at the moment is probably wind turbines. So let's say you've got a bunch of houses near where an offshore wind turbine terminates into the grid. Is there an opportunity for us to work with that generator to, instead of installing a bank of batteries, to install batteries for all of the local residents in a town, and actually then they can become the kind of big decentralized battery that then potentially store that excess energy that's being generated. And maybe we can't avoid curtailment, because generally when we turn wind turbines off, it's because there's going to be a huge amount of excess energy on the grid. But even if we could delay them by 30 minutes or an hour, because actually we're soaking up all of that excess energy, we could significantly reduce the cost of energy for people in that location. We could reduce the curtailment cost to the UK taxpayer, and we can ensure that more of that generator's energy is actually being used and consumed. So yeah, those are kind of two examples of where those two players might come into play.
Really interesting. Thank you. Yes. So a lot of interesting stories to tell, and in terms of potentially creating those relationships and looking at them from a point of view of a non-competitive view, but as a partnership view.
Yeah. I would say if you're working sustainability, if you're working in kind of clean tech, then we've all got a single competitor, and that is carbon. And that's the main thing. As long as we're all working in the same direction, we make money, we don't make money. As long as we're actually driving that number down, then we all win.
Very good. Thank you. Ned, are you happy for me to follow up with the next question? I jumped in on yours somewhat there.
No, that's okay. I mean, I think I'm just reflecting before we do, Ali, just reflecting on the sort of educating the customer kind of theme that's running through what you're saying, Tom. I mean, it's as you say, it is under the bonnet, what you're doing is quite complex, and there's a sort of growing market of people who are interested in solar and batteries and renewables and so forth. But I really liked the idea of having a sort of simple widget on your website, or perhaps developed as an app, that people can play with and sort of see what time would be cheapest for them to run their, the dishwasher tomorrow. And I think that could be a fun little thing for people to be doing, even people that aren't planning to become a customer of yours yet. But I think as a way of sort of showing the kind of the capacity of your system, that could be a very good kind of early way for people to engage, well before they're ready to become a customer, but very much as a part of that journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's it's live on the website already. So yeah, if you go to decentenergy.io, then the Power Hour pops up on the homepage and will tell you, based on your location, what the lowest carbon intensity time of day is tomorrow, so that you can plan ahead. So yeah, that's exactly the reason we built it. Is it's a great tool for explaining the fluctuations in the grid. And yeah, it's a nice give to get, right? It's a nice way of providing some value to folks but as a kind of one-off exercise. And if they like that, then it could lead them to them engaging further with the business. And if it's something they don't care about, then no harm, no foul.
Excellent. Good one. Over to you, Ali.
Ned. And I'll just say, yes, I was in your website earlier, Tom, and as you say, the Power Hour feature pops up straight away. I thought, how interesting. And my second thought was, oh, if only I'm already switched to clean energy. So it's really helpful to know. And perhaps I just needed to do one more click that feature can be used by folks who aren't yet on clean energy, but who are considering it and I can use it anyway.
Yeah, that's actually, you've raised a really interesting point, because there's a bugbear of mine in the clean energy space, because I think actually there was one company that I won't mention because I'll get sued, but a long time ago did get pulled up on this. All of the energy you buy. Sorry, Ali, I'm making some assumptions about what you meant by clean energy. Yeah, energy companies have long had this marketing campaign of all the energy you buy from us is green. And I think that's actually, it's a bit of a misnomer, because actually you're funding the rollout of renewables, which is incredibly important and I fully support. And I wouldn't want to discourage anyone from going with an energy supplier that tells you that all of the energy that you purchase is green, because it means that they are putting the equivalent amount into the grid of clean energy. But this is the thing, that the carbon intensity of the grid does fluctuate throughout the day. And I think we've got another challenge where we need to explain to people all the energy you purchase from your supplier at some point has been generated. So there's kind of a net amount of energy that they've generated versus what you've consumed. But the time of day that you use energy really does make a difference still. Those green electrons don't find their way to your house magically through the grid. And if you make your dinner at exactly 7 p.m., you will be contributing much more heavily to the carbon intensity of the grid than if you made your dinner at 9 p.m. or you started your dinner in a slow cooker earlier in the day. So yeah, no, I think that's sorry, you got me on my soapbox.
No, that's a really important point. Thank you. Okay, so you've alluded to what sounds like a comprehensive sort of package of plans you've got for taking the business forward, and some of which I appreciate, as you said, you can't talk about yet. But can you give us an overview of where you hope Decent Energy will be in 12 months' time?
Yeah, and apologies if this becomes a bit of a lengthy response. So we're targeting 4 key products, and I think this is the easiest way of kind of describing where it is that we're heading with the business. So Shîfter, as we say, open beta at the moment. Anyone can come sign up for that. If you've got Solis Fox ESS or a Give Energy inverter, all the better. We can sign you up today. You could be using that this afternoon. Second product is called Flexer. So that is then enabling consumers to participate in flexibility markets. Many energy suppliers will, and actually NESO themselves had a thing called the Demand Flexibility Service. People will recognize phrases like Octopus saving sessions or free energy Sundays on OVO. Those things are, in essence, enabling some kind of flexibility in the energy that's being purchased by asking you to consume energy at different times of day. But the difference is we're going to give you cash money rather than any points or free energy hours. So the idea is, if we use your equipment to participate in the flexibility trading event, you will get 80% of what we earn from that event. We will retain 20% as a service fee. So that's Flexer. The third thing we're calling Switcher. So that's looking at your exact consumption. And if we're working with people either on smart meter data, or we're working with people with inverter data, which is much better view of your household energy consumption, we will make a recommendation for you to switch your tariff based on your exact consumption. So this isn't comparison. This is right, we've done the comparison already, and this one is the cheapest based on the exact way that you use energy. We can only tell you historically how you used energy. So we can only say this is what it would have been cheapest. But generally, you're going to continue to use energy in much the same way. And also, we'll constantly monitor your usage and make recommendations to switch tariff when it makes sense to do so. And that's in the scoping stages at the moment. So that's something that we're looking into developing right now. And then our end state, our final kind of our final state that we would love to get to, is to facilitate peer-to-peer energy trading. So we see this as the really big deal in energy over the course of the next few years, where we could facilitate transactions between you and your neighbor. So let's say Ned with his solar panels and his battery is producing an excess amount of energy, and Ali, you just put your car on to charge, and let's say you live next door to each other, Ned would maybe stop charging his battery because he knows that he's got excess solar and he can charge his battery later in the day, and your car only needs to charge for an hour, and you could buy those electrons from Ned rather than us needing to create an greater demand on the grid overall, which would then lead to potentially, less renewable sources of energy needing to come online. So that reduces primary energy demand. So we need to hopefully burn less stuff to actually meet demand. And it also reduces what's called transmission loss. So if you live quite far away from your nearest power generation source, the actual process of moving energy to your plug socket can actually be quite an energy intensive process. And it might be that you need to the generation source needs to generate 2 kilowatts of energy for you to be able to consume 1 kilowatt at your plug, because over the transmission network, you get transmission losses. So if we can consume that energy much more locally, kind of hyper locally, and manage local energy networks rather than the wider grid, then we can really start to reduce the total amount of energy that we need as a society. So yeah, that's where we'd love to get to. But the problem we've got there is there's actually no regulatory framework yet that enables us to facilitate peer-to-peer energy trading. But we are in regular communications actually with Ofgem and DESNZ about when that might be coming to the market.
It's interesting. I was going to ask you about the regulatory side, whether it existed or not, or to what degree. But great. Okay, so in short, it's going to be a busy 12 months, right? Exceedingly busy and beyond, I'm sure. Okay,
Let's go with beyond. I'm not sure I'll get all that done in 12 months.
Yeah, okay. Ned, I will pass back to you.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's so fascinating, Tom. And I've got so many kind of questions about how logistically your system will kind of handle that sort of neighbor to neighbor kind of energy transactions. I imagine that would have to sit kind of locally to the neighborhood rather than being managed remotely.
No, so yeah, we're a software as a service company, and I don't plan on doing hardware anytime soon. So we're planning on managing all of this with cloud infrastructure. So it will be that we know the location of assets, and the decisions that we're making are local based on the state of the local assets. But yeah, we would like to, if at all possible, completely avoid the necessity of actually installing hardware in people's homes. We think that introduces just too much of a barrier. The idea of having another person come to your house, install another box in your loft. We're really trying to solve the problem for 95% of people that don't want to solve it for themselves or don't have the capability to solve it for themselves.
That's fantastic. Really, I guess coming on to the sort of, we're now wrapping up the podcast, and I wanted to ask you really 2 or 3 questions. One was, where do you hope your sector will be in 10 years' time?
Yeah, so I think 10 years' time is the kind of the vision that we've described to you guys. That's kind of where we see this moving to in the next 10 years. So yeah, energy managed hyper locally, decisions being made based on the load of an entire kind of street or village or low voltage feeder, or kind of however we want to see that. But yeah, this is I think the really, really big opportunity for energy independence, for decarbonisation, for reducing the cost of energy overall for people. It's just this hyper local management of energy, it has to be the direction of travel. And also as well, it's going to become a problem. It's already becoming a problem. If you look over at the Netherlands, which is not too far from here at all, based in Cambridge, they have a problem at the moment. They're calling grid congestion, where actually they've had a really, really successful renewables rollout. And what that's resulted in is this thing they're calling grid congestion, where there are too many renewables on the grid at any given point in time. And actually people are being charged to export energy. So if you're exporting energy from your solar panels in certain places in the country, you can actually end up being charged for that now. Yeah. And this is a very real problem that we could be facing in a few years as well if we don't get this bit right. So there's a slide on my pitch deck that is right at the beginning, which is a quote from a chap called Saul Griffiths, who's an Australian, and the quote is, "We need to decarbonise demand with the same urgency that we decarbonise supply." And I think that's the overarching message. That's where we need to be in 10 years. We need to focus on the demand problem. Building solar panels, building wind turbines is absolutely essential, but we need to make sure that we're looking at both sides of that coin.
Sure. Okay, one piece of advice for other startups pursuing sustainability and financial objectives.
I would say, given the state of various different kind of funding mechanisms around the world at the moment, make sure that you have got a really clear business case for what you're taking to market. Sustainability needs to wash its face. It's up until now, I think there's been a lot of investment on a really attractive idea or some new novel kind of material science, but we're getting to the point now where we need to know that these solutions are commercially viable. That's the way that we protect sustainability, I think, as a bottom line. It doesn't matter which side of the aisle you sit on, which side of the everyone wants to save money, right? The one thing that I think we can all agree on is that we've got more money left in our bank accounts at the end of the month. That's a good thing. So let's hit them in the wallet.
Fantastic. What a fantastic episode. Thank you so much, Tom. Just finally, how can people find out more about you and about Decent Energy?
It comes to the website. So yeah, decentenergy.io. You can come sign up to the product there. We also are very active on socials. So LinkedIn, Facebook, Blue Sky, Instagram. Come find us there. And yeah, if you are interested in this space, then feel free to get in touch. There's some details on how to reach out to us on the website as well.
Thanks for joining us today. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, like, and share it with your colleagues. For more about the podcast, about us, our marketing services, and our wider support for purpose-led organisations, please visit our website at theimpactfiles.co.uk.